Ladies and gentlemen, there has always been match fixing in sport. Always. So, let me give you an example. Ancient Olympics, set as most of you guys know in 753 BC. If you were to go to the site right now in Olympia in Greece, you would find a row of ruined statues leading from the stadium out to the main road. And those statues were built with money. And the money was taken in fines from athletes and coaches who were caught cheating and fixing at the ancient Olympics. So I beg you, if you're, when you guys go back to wherever you're from, Auckland, Dunedin, Nelson, wherever, Canterbury, I do not want you to go back thinking Declan Hill and Sports New Zealand have come to you and said, there's this brand new thing, huge thing, you've never seen it before, match fixing. Okay, please don't. Really, this is an ancient, old phenomenon. However, there's a new twist to it. There's a new thing coming down our pipeline. And it's happening on our time, on our watch. And it's risking, and this sounds big, but it's risking the entire future of sport in a way that we have almost never seen it before. Now, those are big words. And I mean no insult to any of the other speakers, like Peter or Min, or any of the people that you're speaking to today, when I tell you that this is the biggest sport issue today. Because if a sport loses its credibility, if it loses its integrity, if the fans cannot believe what's happening on that field, it's over. So, let me give you a little bit more of my background before we get cracking. I am an investigative journalist. The book, The Fix, Soccer and Organized Crime, which is a Northern Hemisphere book, as you can tell. It's the story of how I put on some hidden camera devices and walked into an Asian match-fixing gang as they were fixing major international soccer tournaments, football tournaments. And I'll show you their operations today. We'll walk our way through that. However, I've got another punch on my talent. I've got a PhD in this. So a lot of what my work in match fixing is based on statistics. It's based on what Peter was kind enough to describe yesterday as evidence-based work. Hard, complex data on the patterns of how match fixing works. So we'll be touching a little bit on that today. Tomorrow at Sport New Zealand, I'll be walking through a presentation I call Number 8 Wire, Solutions to Match Fixing. So cheap, practical, and effective ways of stopping this new tide of match fixing that's threatening the world of sports. Got it? I see a lot of hungover heads afraid to kind of nod back at me like, whoa, man, that was a good party last night. Right. I don't go quite as far as Peter in flip charts, but I'm not really a good PowerPoint person. So what I'd like to do is make this entire room a PowerPoint presentation, if you don't mind. Rianne, can you bring up all the lights? And Jarrett, I'm so sorry about this. I know this is playing havoc with your camera and stuff. But I'd like to show you now what the new phenomenon of match fixing is about. What this gasoline that we've never seen before, that's being poured onto a low burning flame of match corruption, what it is. So to do that, I'm going to turn this whole room into a PowerPoint presentation. You guys get this? All right, I can see some doubtful looks. So I'm going to go right the way to the back of the room here, and this wall over here is 0. Got it? This is 0. And the good-looking chap over there, right at the end. Yes, that's you. Yes. What's your name, sir? Right. Where Trevor is 100%. Don't worry, Trevor. I'll be over there in a couple of minutes, and we are not kissing. Don't worry. We're all right. Okay. So this is 0. That's 100%. And what I'm going to show you now is the world of sports gambling. Like this power, the new globalized world of sports gambling. So, sir, can you turn around? I'm Declan, by the way. Sorry about this, singling you out.
Mike.
Nice to meet you, Mike. Right, Mike, I'd like you to witness this if you could. Because I'm going to start with 0, I'm going to start with a gambling site that I think we all know about, Las Vegas, right? You know that, everyone knows Las Vegas. So Mike, I just want you to see this because it's, I don't know if Trevor will be able to see this way over there. This is the Las Vegas share of the sports gambling market, the total world market, okay? Right, everyone got this? Did you see that, Mike? Trevor, you probably missed it. I'll do it again, okay? Hang on one second, all right? This is the Las Vegas version, like the total take of their sports gambling world. Like that. It's a tiny percentage. Tiny. Las Vegas uses sports gambling to bring people into their casinos, but the line, the betting line and the betting odds moved out of Las Vegas years ago. So let me add in organizations like TAB, like the government-sponsored lotteries, the places in Canada, Sweden, Germany, where the government either regulates or runs the gambling industry. All of those, which are represented by an organization called World Lottery Associations, is about like this. Now, let's add in the Brits. Everyone knows about them. William Hill, Paddy Power, Bet365, an organization called Betfair, which is the eBay of gambling. That's now gone to about here. So these are all the European, Australian, and government-run organizations in Las Vegas in the sports gambling world. Here. The rest, all this, all the way over to my new friend Trevor, all this, all over here to 100%. Don't get worried, Trevor. It's all right, mate. Where are you, brother? Hello, Trevor. Quick hug. Right, okay, there we go. All this is 100%. This is 100%. That is the Asian market. It is huge, it's massive, and it's biting into this field over here. Anyone see the newspaper, the Herald, this weekend? How Lotto, New Zealand, their sports gambling, the amount of money is falling. And organizations like yourselves are losing money. Part of that reason, I don't want to generalize too much, but part of the reason is that this huge sports gambling market is eating away into this market here. If you are a serious sports gambler, you bet with the Asians. How big is this room? I mean, that was great fun, wasn't it? But let's get down to some numbers. How big is this room? How big is the total of this sports gambling market? Well, I would suggest to you it's a bit like measuring the Mexican drug trade. We know it's big, but we don't know quite how big it is because these guys are mostly unregulated, illegal guys. Most of them are. So I don't know if we can see this, if you can see the text here, but this total room was estimated by some of the government-run people, the World Lottery Association, as about $93 billion. The European Sports Security Association, which is the British guys, William Hill, Ladbrokes, all those guys, they estimate it as around $324 billion. Interpol estimated at $500 billion. And a friend and colleague of mine that worked at the Hong Kong Jockey Club, which is the world's biggest publicly run gambling site, at $1.5 trillion. All I can tell you as New Zealand sports people is that it's a big, big, big market. It's a massive market. And here's the problem. It's run by criminals. And most of that cash, this enormous amount of cash, is flowing around the sports world. It's corrupted most Asian sports. There are a few honorable exceptions to that sweeping statement. But let me go through a couple of examples so that you're not sitting there thinking, crikey, this guy must be exaggerating. Asian sports are a graveyard. They're almost completely gone of credibility. Mike, are you a fan of sumo wrestling? No, me neither. Trevor, you're not, that's not one of yours, is it? Okay, well, as you guys know, and there's probably somebody in the room, there's always one person that knows this kind of stuff. Sumo wrestling has a history either 900 years old or 300 years old. There's a kind of a really heated debate as to how old it is. What is without doubt is there's a national championship that's held in Kyoto. And this is their, every annual year, this is the big event for Japanese sumo wrestling. And it's only been cancelled twice. Once was in the year 1945. And I don't think I need to explain to any New Zealander the significance of that year. The American Air Force had blitzed Japan. It was a devastated, destroyed, ruined and ravaged country. And the sumo wrestlers said, it's just not appropriate that we have our championship in this year. It's just not appropriate. Hold with you that image of a destroyed, devastated landscape, because that is what Asian sport in general looks like at the moment. Because the only other time in the entire history of Japanese sumo wrestling that national championship was cancelled was in 2011, where colleagues of mine, investigative journalists in Japan, got hold of the thousands of text messages between the Yakuza, Japanese mafia, and the stables, the Japanese sumo wrestlers. And they were fixing so many of the games based on this gambling market that it was such a disaster that the Sumo Wrestling Administration just said, we can't have a national championship. Nobody will believe this anymore. And since that date, sumo wrestling has been gone on life support systems. They frantically try to reestablish credibility. If sumo wrestling was that, it would be an isolated incident. But I ask you, anyone who thinks that I might be gilding the lily or exaggerating this, go look at the Wikipedia site for Taiwanese baseball. In 1991, it started with 13 teams. It's now down to 4. Every other team, all the other 9 teams were thrown out of the league because they were caught match fixing. South Korea, it's difficult to find a sport that hasn't been touched with match fixing scandal. They fixed motorboat racing, they fixed basketball, they fixed baseball. They fixed a sport that I didn't even know existed called e-sports. Everyone know that one? Where a bunch of geeky young men sit together, watched by geeky other young men doing computer games. They fixed that. Now, if you're tempted to laugh, please don't, because 4 of their South Korean young national football team players, soccer players, committed suicide 2 years ago when a massive match fixing was discovered in their league. These poor guys were South Korea is such an honor-based system, a trust-based system, that they jumped out of their apartments, or they took poison and killed themselves. Young men, 24, 28 years old. If it were just Korea, Japan, South Korea, well, no big issue. But Chinese soccer is a national embarrassment. That's not my words. That's the words of the former Chinese premier. After 200 people were arrested in the national football of China. And that's from the physiotherapists, the guys who clean the boots and stuff for the players, all the way up to the president of the Chinese Football Association. Heck, they arrested, sorry about this, you're now the dodgy Chinese Football Administration guy. They arrested our man here, excuse me. They put in Peter, sorry about this. 3 months later, they find Peter's corrupt as well, sorry. They have to arrest him and replace him. I mean, the corruption is so embedded in Chinese soccer that even now, I was watching the BBC last night, they've launched a multi-billion plan so that the Chinese will win the World Cup in 2015. Ha, says the Hong Kong Jockey Club. The Hong Kong Jockey Club, their neighbors, still won't take bets on Chinese soccer. They say it's too corrupt. It's just an unbelievable league. The same thing is seen in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand. Right across that region, our league's touched with corruption. I'll give you one story, just to give you a sense of what you're dealing with here. The paradigm shift of corruption imbued in Asian sports. Something called the Southeast Asian Games. It's kind of like a mini Olympics. In the year, one of the years that I was doing research out there, it was being held in the Philippines. And Vietnam, the chargé d'affaires for the Vietnamese national team that was going off to the Southeast Asian Games, held a press conference. And the entire Vietnam press corps showed up. And somebody asked, they said, look, so sorry, Mr. Lee, we don't think we're going to do very well. It's not a very good team this year. Our athletes aren't very good. You're not going to believe this. but this is verbatim what happens. The charge d'affaires says, don't worry, I've got it fixed. Everything's fixed. All the charge d'affaires we've all met, and the Philippines are going to get the most medals because it's in the Philippines. The second is going to be the Singaporeans because a lot of the national headquarters, international headquarters for the corporations that sponsor us, they're going to get the second thing. And the third place will be us Vietnamese. And he explains where the Vietnamese are going to win their medals. Now, Vietnam, as we all know, is a communist country, and journalists in communist countries are renowned for many things, but it's not really an open press system. So nobody covers it, except for one young lady who hasn't drunk the Kool-Aid and works for Agence France Presse. She writes the story up, and it goes on the wires. And the Filipinos pick it up. And the Filipino journalists are known for many things, but lack of courage is not one of them. And they splash this story all over their front pages. You know, the SEA games are fixed. This is what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. So the Vietnamese respond in a way that you would expect from a communist regime. They look through the system and they figure out the problem. That's the journalist. And they go to this young lady and she has to apologize for writing the story. But she doesn't apologize and she doesn't retract the story. She just says, I'm so sorry that this has caused a national embarrassment. Two things happen. At the end of the Southeast Asian Games, the Filipino journalists again show great delight by showing the final medal tables and the predictions of the Vietnamese charge d'affaires, and they exactly total. And two, the Vietnamese national football team flies back, and as they get off the plane, a bunch of them are arrested, eventually charged and convicted for fixing. They put in 9 of their national football team for fixing at that games. The reason why there's so much corruption in Asian sport is because of these Asian sports gambling market, that power of that market. Let's play a game just to warm ourselves up. Has anyone here, please raise your hand, heard of a company called Adidas, or Adidas, please? Sorry, just to get your hands up. I know you're all a bit hungover, or many of you are hungover. Just get the hands up in the air. Good, all right. Please keep your hands up if you've heard of a company called IBC Bet. One gentleman there, good. IBC Bet, as you'll confirm, has a gross gaming revenue of about 5 times the size of all of Adidas. Adidas' total cash flow in and out is roughly $10 billion US dollars a year. IBC Bet is roughly $50 billion. That's the size of it, and that's just one company. These are enormous companies. And I'll just run you quickly through what's happening. They're largely, quote, illegal. That definition we could spend hours debating, but for the purpose of this conversation, we'll call them illegal. They're largely irregulated. They have what's known as a lower VIG. So if you're a serious gambler, you go with these guys, because they only take 1% of your bet, whereas TAB and the government guys here can be as high as 30%. This is where the fixing occurs. And most of these Asian sports companies are completely uninterested in dealing with guys like you. They have no interest in sharing information with you guys. It's just a pain in the neck for them. Right, so what's happened? What's happened to that huge Asian sports market? Well, Asian sports fans haven't turned off sports. It's just they've turned off their local sports. And they're now turning their attention to sports around the world. So this is the reason why when you're going through the streets of China, you can see many, many people clad in Manchester United shirts or NBA shirts. What's happening as well? That gambling market, this enormous gambling market from there over to my new friend Trevor, has switched mostly off the Asian gambling market, and it's now flowing around the world. Pools of this enormous cash, ranging from 93 billion to 1.5 trillion, are flowing around the world onto games that just were not, you wouldn't be worth fixing games like this 10 years ago. Now they are. What's happening as well is that the fixers, the same guys that have destroyed Asian sport, are now traveling around the world and they're fixing games all around the world, wherever this huge market is going. Sir, could you please read this for us? Yes, sir. Yes, please. Let's change the voice in the room for 1 second here.
For their part, Dan Tan and his group constitute a network that is both dangerous and quick to violence in the case of anyone who breaks their rules. This is stated in the testimony of one of the members who said, "It take very little in the case of treason by one of the group to risk their murder."
Thank you.
Guido Salvini, the more state prosecutor.
You get the message. Let's take a look at these guys. Let's take a look at one of their messages. Sorry, sir, tell me your name.
Trevor.
Trevor.
John.
Right, John and Trevor, you can discuss this afterwards. Yes, all right. Now, what I'm going to show you now is the activities, as John has just said, of a very violent group. This is the guys that I infiltrated a number of years ago. But I want to show you, just take a second before we get into their network, that everything that I say is based on substantive, court vetted evidence. There have been a number of cases, including this one from Guido Salvini from Cremona, who's a great man, by the way, a really courageous man that's exposed a whole network of this kind of stuff. This is from a Finnish court that has achieved a number of convictions, which is the police officers in this room know is the gold standard. We have the documents from inside the thing. We know who these guys are. This is a gentleman who fixed Belgian football, a number of games in the Europa League, which is their top division. This is Wilson Raj Paramal. This is Dan Tan. We know who these guys are. We know most of their associates, and you'll see some video towards the end of the presentation about what they're doing and how they operate and work. But let's just show you from these court documents Dan Tan's network. And so this is just one gang that was traveling around the world fixing these games. Right. So based out of Singapore, they fixed the El Salvadorian national team. So the entire El Salvadorian national soccer team has now been suspended. A number of the guys ended up in jail. Same thing for Nicaragua. Same thing for Peru. They were dealing with a number of teams there. Ecuador, it's the same thing. Canada, my country, and I want to stress this very clearly. Canada is an international joke in this area. We have a league called the Canadian Soccer League, which is a complete and utter joke. Fixing is so endemic in this league, and I'm not making this up. You're going to think I'm making this story up, but I'm not. November of last year, so 4 months ago, there was a game in London, Ontario, and the fix was so obvious to the team that wasn't involved in the fix that they said, in true Canadian style, F you, we're going to score on our own goal and ruin your fix. So they turn around and they start running towards their own goal to score. The other team runs and tries to stop them from scoring in their own goal. And this goes on for 20 minutes. And our government has done nothing. Like absolutely nothing about this state of affairs. South Africa, some of you guys know my work with the New York Times. I exposed a series of match fixing just before the South African 2010 World Cup. The big thing about that was that it was achieved with the help of various South African football officials. They were working with these guys. Zimbabwe, essentially the entire Zimbabwe Football Association was run by the fixers. The fixers would come into the games at half-time and say, we need the fix to go this way. Can you make sure you lose 4 goals in the second half rather than 3? Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, where there's been a major cabinet problem with that and some violence. Egypt, some of their officials have been implicated in this. Zambia, the Zambian players have traveled around the world. Ghana, as you know, Malta, where there's been more cases of match fixing. Greece, where 100 people were arrested. Bosnia-Herzegovina, Slovenia, Cyprus, where there have been a number of fire bombings, Finland, Germany, where 209 games were discovered to be fixed, Austria, top league as well, Italy, where there's so much corruption, basically that league is dead man walking, Slovakia, Czech Republic, again, people have done. Slovenia, Switzerland. Anyway, look, you're getting the basic picture here. Bulgaria, Romania, Belgium, Netherlands, China, where a lot of the cash flows into this thing. Australia, where the gang last year fixed third-tier soccer with the Southern Stars in Melbourne. So this is just what we know substantiated. This is Dan Tan's network, and this is one group. Let's see one of their guys in action. Let's take a look at just a little snippet filmed by a friend of mine as they were attempting a business deal involving a number of fixes. Jaden, have we got this one? Any journalists in the room? Okay, you might be undercover. Just to know, the allegation of the Mali team is unsubstantiated. But certainly, the presence of these fixes at the major international football tournaments is not. The Fix Soccer and Organized Crime showed their work during the 2006 World Cup in Germany, and it was confirmed independently. I went to the players and the coaches and the match administrators and the officials for the World Cup and also for the following major tournaments, that these guys were at these tournaments and they were proposing these deals to impoverished teams like Mali. There was no question of it. And the official line for FIFA and many of the international football organizations was they'd gone to all these tournaments, they'd constructed this huge network, but they never actually succeeded. Basically, they were the unluckiest tourists in the world. They kept going to all these tournaments, and they never actually succeeded. Just a quick thing, we'll talk about this more in detail tomorrow, but many of you, I think, will quite legitimately look at that kind of scrawny guy there on that undercover video. Oh, and by the way, that was the guy who was doing the Southern Stars, and he went to England, and they caught him fixing in England. So he was in jail up until a couple of months ago, that guy. You can see that's one of the Asian fixers' runners, and he's trying to do the deal with these guys. That guy who's showing up isn't walking into a New Zealand dressing room. He's not going to be walking into a bar talking to the New Zealand guys. He's going to form a relationship with the Mongrel Mob or Black Power or one of your gangs here so that they can make money on the Asian market, the Asian sports gambling market. So that guy, who most New Zealand athletes would just look at and say, oh, you know, on your bike, mate, isn't the guy. He's pitching the deal, that particular deal, with somebody he assumes is a local criminal. And it's the local criminals that will be making the deals. Right, just a quick review. European countries that have had national police investigations in the last 5 years. I've testified in a number of these court trials. I won't go through them because we're starting to run out of time. But all the stuff with red, all the stuff with red is where they've had convictions for match fixing. And Bulgaria, actually 2 days ago, they've got their first conviction for match fixing. The Netherlands, 2 months ago, they got their first conviction for match fixing. And Switzerland, they didn't get a conviction for match fixing. They did have an investigation. They did prove the guys were fixing, but through a legal technicality, the guy got off. Okay, look at this map, look at me, and if you're from Dunedin, there's probably a 4-word question floating through your mind. Dunedin, the graveyard for the hope of the Springboks and the Brits when the French come in with their attitude. Dunedin and the All Blacks kick their ass. So you're from Dunedin, and you're looking at me with my tales of the New York Mafia and all the Asian guys, and your 4-word question is, why should I care? We don't have corruption in Dunedin. That's an Auckland problem. Down here on the mainland, we don't have those issues. Up in the North Island, that's your problem of corruption, but down here, we've got nothing. Is that not true, people from Dunedin? Oh, they're still drunk. They'll be in about 11 o'clock holding their heads and stuff. Right. That's a legitimate question. New Zealand is not a country renowned for A, corruption, and B, sports corruption. It just isn't. It's a moral, decent country. We all know that. It's known internationally around the world. Transparency International recognizes you guys as a perennial one to the top 5 in countries not affected by corruption. So let me address that question that I'm sure isn't just from people from Dunedin, but it's in all of your minds. Whether it's the forefront or the back, why should I care about this issue? How does this issue affect New Zealand? Right. That's a moral response. We don't have this problem. Sports corruption is an issue of the other. And since my work came out, I've had this repeated conversation. I've had it, and I just bring these out here, these countries: Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Germany, England, and Singapore. I've had it repeatedly with journalists and sports administrators saying that's very interesting, but it doesn't affect us because corruption is the issue of the French, or it's the issue of people from southern Italy, or it's an issue of the Chinese, not us in Singapore. And I won't belabor the point, but if you were to go back to the maps, to go back to the networks that I showed you, every single one of those countries has had this happen since that moral response happened. So I say to you, your morality is no protection from this massive sports gambling market, this massive liquidity of sports gambling market. Having said that, sir, I don't want you to think that I'm associating New Zealand with Turkey or Greece or Italy. Those are leagues of high corruption. They genuinely are, and there genuinely is a difference between New Zealand, which is a country and a sports of low corruption, to those countries. But the time to start protecting your sports is now, before you have these issues. Before you have the issue which has hit almost every single other country in the world. There's another issue that we'll be speaking about tomorrow, which is how do you protect your athletes when they're going overseas, when they're participating in major international tournaments overseas? How do you protect them from those? And any sport which is judged at the Olympics has issues with fixing. You've got 2 boxers, you've got a TKD, Taekwondo, fighters going, and a wrestler going off to Rio. How are you protecting those athletes? What is the strategy so that you can protect your athletes when they're on a stage? Right. Here's my 2-word response to the 4-word question that may be in some of your minds. Why should I care? I'm New Zealander. Here's my 2-word response back to you. This is controversial. You ready for this? Lou Vincent. Lou Vincent. And my question to all of you, my question to every single Sports New Zealand official, to everyone that administrates it, is how are you going to stop the next Lou Vincent? Where's your plans for gambling addiction among your players and athletes? Where's your mental health programs to protect your athletes? I mean, you'll talk about mental health, I'm sure, but you'll say mental health is all about winning. But how many of your sports have mental health programs where an athlete who's going through divorce, as Lou Vincent did, can turn and say, look, I don't want to say this to my coach, I don't want to say this to my manager because I'll lose my contract, but I'm in serious problems here. I spent my entire packet at the pokie machine because I'm just feeling so bad. Where's your counselors? Where's your psychologists? Okay, here's the next question. This is something. John, can you please read this for us again? Just, again, change the voice for us, please.
He was approached by a gambler in 1999 who had told him there was a syndicated of things are not coincidences, the gambler was alleged to have said a recent soccer match. If you want to know, the real money is, it is in the syndicate that is going on around the world right now, speculating on the likelihood of certain results or occurrences. The gambler said prominent sportsmen were involved, including some in English soccer and tennis, a fix soccer and organised crime. Some Declan Hill.
Let me guess, John, you're not from New Zealand, are you?
I'm actually from England.
Had to be an Englishman, didn't it? Who was this guy? Who said this? And what happened to him? Let me leave you with this final note. The man who said this was one of your greatest sportsmen ever. There's a guy named Stephen Fleming. Has anyone not heard of Stephen Fleming? Has anyone ever seen Stephen Fleming not give 100%? Going into stadiums, wearing your flag, with your values and morals? The best of New Zealand. But when he came out with this, 2004, and he said, this is going on in sport. Do you know what the response of New Zealand was? To a man who's never betrayed you, who's never let you down. Go back. Go back 12 years and see how you treated Stephen Fleming. See how the press treated Stephen Fleming. Oh, you're just trying to sell your book. You're just trying to bring up controversy. Fleming, we love you for playing cricket, but shut up about sport, corruption. Fleming, your place is to play cricket. It's not to bring up these issues. And look at what Stephen Fleming talked about. Tennis. If people had taken Stephen Fleming seriously, there would be no controversy now at the Australian Open. I wouldn't be writing international bestsellers if people had taken Fleming seriously. So, stand before you today. I don't want to belabor the point. I've risked a lot for sport. I've risked my health, I've risked my reputation, I've risked a lot of money to bring you this message, to fight for sport. So I urge you, and I implore you, and I beg you, when the next Stephen Fleming comes, when the next great athlete in New Zealand comes, make sure that he has a vehicle that he can report corruption to. Thanks, guys. Questions?
Questions, yes.
Happy
Please
to take any questions. Joe, do we have a microphone so people aren't silenced, their voices can be loud? And if one of you ladies is on that side so we can make sure we got everybody quickly and stuff. Sir, let me make sure you get a microphone so we can all hear you.
Brilliant presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
How safe are you in terms of your life at this point?
Much easier than it was while I was doing the investigation. The investigation was genuinely, if they had known that was taping them, I never would have come back. I really never would have. Now, with all those police investigations and all this pressure on, they've got much bigger things than me to worry about. That's not an issue for me anymore. But thank you for asking that question. Yeah, sir. Okay, and let's make sure we got Mike, because I just want to make sure people are equal in volume to me.
I know individual sport's not immune, but you talk a lot about football. You've made references to cricket, baseball, basketball. What can you say about individual athletes, and particularly the Olympic movement?
I think that's a great question. And what is your sport, sir?
Triathlon.
Okay, here's what I would do, and this is a number 8 wire solution. We'll talk about this tomorrow if you're able to come to the seminar, but if you can't, write this down. Betfair.co.uk, and that is the eBay of sports. That has almost every sport that you can possibly imagine, and there's betting going on. So I think a couple of months ago they had the Gaelic Games, you know, where the big guys toss the cabers? They had betting on that. So before you're coming into a major triathlon championship, you can just take a 10-minute, 5-10-minute look at how much money is starting to flow into that sport, into the things. And you'll be surprised. It won't be, you know, like Manchester United game, it won't be hundreds of millions. But you can get a quick sense, and with triathlon and the individual sports, times it by 10 or times it by 100, because that's a legitimate market. That's this market to the wall. But it's a kind of a good indication as to how big it is there. So you get that sensibility of what it is. And as far as individual sports and individual people are concerned, I don't want to make generalizations, but it is a massive market. And if you're a guy who's got a hamstring issue and you know you're not going to be able to compete as well, why don't you just bet against yourself and make some cash? If you don't have any morals. Other questions? Boys. Yes, sir.
You refer to a lot of team sports, and obviously there's only one or two.
Joe, just put a mic up to him, because I want to make sure both Trevor and Mike can hear this.
Obviously there's only a few people involved in the actual fix. So
Yes.
what about the other guys that are in the team? How do the competitors, what about those guys, and they see this happening? Don't they do anything about it, or?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it really depends on the league that you're talking about. I remember talking to a young Australian player who had participated in a fixed match where he'd scored a bunch of goals. And then he realized that the fix had been in, and he pulls his car over the side of the road and he bursts into tears. Like, he realizes that what he had imagined was his best athletic accomplishment of his life was just a bunch of nonsense. So it can be that way. In leagues, when I was speaking to this gentleman over here, I said, New Zealand is not a league of high corruption, like Turkey, like Italy, like Greece. In those leagues, it's a system of business. It's an industrial system of business. And those aren't my words, those are the words of some of the Italian police that are investigating it. In other words, you're saying it's a small group of people. Well, actually, it's the club owners in the Serie B, Serie C, and in the lower leagues of Italy. Now the police are investigating of a group of teams of about 80. They've got active investigations against 32 of them. So that's a substantial section of the league. And that problem there is that the league owners, at the beginning of the season, say, right, we've got 40 games this year, we're going to try to win 30 of them, and we know we're going to lose these 10, and we're going to bet against ourselves on the gambling market with our mafia chums, and we'll make more money losing those 10 games than we will winning the other 30. Ma'am.
Just want to make an observation.
Please. Please. I'm sorry, we can just get the mic over and stuff. Again, I'm just trying to make sure that we're equally balanced. You don't have loud, quote, expert at the front of the room.
Just an observation, you said
Yes, please, ma'am.
at the end of the statement, if you have no morals, and I think that's one of our biggest risks, is that we assume bad people do bad things, but I think we fall into a huge gap if that's our mentality, because I think lots of work has proven in psychology, which is my field, but that good people do bad things too. So I think that's something we have to keep a really close eye on.
Particularly when they have addiction issues. I bet you, and I don't mean to single out poor Lou Vincent, I think everybody knows that. That's an internationally known tragedy of a good sportsman, a very good sportsman, who went down into the spiral of addiction. And so that was my question to you guys, is, you know, gambling and drinking among sportsmen is almost a byword. When those guys go on to, or when the women go on to dangerous issues, what is stopping them? What are the mechanisms to give them a hand? Because those addiction rates in athletes are actually higher than the general population, because they've got far more stress than things. So thank you. Yes, Joe. Yes, ma'am.
Are there any sports or countries or organisations that you know of that have got a blueprint for combating it, like best practice when it comes to combating it or dealing with this sort of stuff?
I was really hoping you wouldn't say that and ask me that question. This is kind of bad. Do you know who's leading the way in this? The Australians. Where's Greg? Is Greg here? Yeah, come on, stand up. Sorry about that, you're a marked man now. But I do want you to remind him that you guys did beat them in the World Cup. Greg is a member of the National Sports Integrity Unit. The Aussies are 10 years ahead of everyone else. They've actually got a police unit dedicated to this out of Melbourne. They're saying sport is such an integral part of Australian who we are that we're going to protect our sports and our athletes. And so they've really engaged in this. So this afternoon I meet with Jonathan Coleman, and that will be one of my recommendations, that New Zealand puts aside 1 or 2 police officers who have got themselves educated. So if you come in from Surf New Zealand saying, we can't believe this, but we're finding out some of our competition. And by the way, I'm just pulling that out of the air. I know there's somebody from Surf New Zealand, I'm just pulling that out of the air. I'm not suggesting there's any issues. But a sport like that, or triathlon or something where guys think it's totally thing, you have police officers, as they do in Australia, that are up to speed with this. The Australians on the National Federal Police have got a very interesting rubric where they can figure out which sports are most likely to be targeted for corruption. So it's things like that. So I know there's a rivalry, I know it's mostly friendly, but the Aussies are really taking a lead in this. Last question, then let's take a break and stuff. Yes, ma'am. And again, I'll be around all today, so I'm happy to chat in private over a cup of coffee.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you,
Is there any established link between the gaming corruption and doping in sport?
I've heard it, I haven't seen it. Your compatriot David Howman has talked about those issues, saying that the same guys that are supplying the doping are also helping them fix. I think there's been some stuff coming out of Australian police investigations. But look, what I've said today is pretty controversial, and I'm just speaking about stuff that I know about, robust stuff that I know that I can back up. So I've never seen the evidence, but these guys have. But I don't want to make a personal opinion on that because I want to keep my credibility with you. So, right, thanks guys. Thank you very much.